Our planet is defined by its vast oceans, covering over 70% of the Earth's surface. For decades, the extraordinary work of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, has brought this alien world to our fingertips. From mapping uncharted waters to studying the secrets of shipwrecks, NOAA's mission is to understand and protect our oceanic world.
The way that we have historically interacted with the ocean under the category of exploration has been through the lens of science. The questions of modern science, the tools and techniques of modern science. Today's view of ocean science has been very strongly influenced by the voyage of the HMS Challenger, which happened 150 years ago and is understood to have been the first oceanographic voyage.
We're able to stand on the shoulders of other explorers and pioneers that came before us. They use different technology. We're a little bit more advanced, but the same spirit is there.
The Challenger produced 50 volumes of reports, which absolutely laid the foundation of ocean knowledge on which today's ocean exploration continues to build.
As Americans, we've always been looking beyond the frontier, always exploring, having an eye towards new discoveries.
Pilot has control. Pull the pin.
We're uncovering so many new things that are really alien to us. But all of those are just stepping stones, building blocks to be able to gain a better understanding of the ocean. And you need those building blocks if we're going to be able to make the right decisions on how to interact with the ocean in the future, how we're going to manage our resources.
We have climate change, we have ocean acidification, all of those things that scientists tell us about.
Just as much as we see change on a climate scale here on the surface, all of that's happening underwater as well. It's not a quiet place. It's not a still place. There's currents that rip around these areas in the bottom of the ocean that are driving the circulation throughout the whole globe. To gain a better understanding of that is super important.
Exploration should never just be centered on scientists. We should always center our exploration in a broader context. We should be able to take that exploration and translate it for the public, to give it to the public for them to be able to understand. And that's how we get the public excited about exploration. That's how we get the public excited about what lives in the deep ocean. And it's how we get that next generation of scientists.
Pilot, dive super.
Go ahead, dive super.
Let's descend at 15 meters a minute, hold at 50.
Good copy.
The history of science as a field used to only study people who were considered scientists, who considered themselves to be scientists. And there is now a recognition that it's important to make that lens a bit wider.
We look at the ocean one way, but you don't have to go too far working with different coastal communities where they see the ocean in a completely different way.
As a coastal Chumash person, everything in my culture includes the ocean. It means waves come in, the waves go out. The ocean was doing that before I was born. The ocean will continue to do that when I'm gone. We can't live without the ocean, but without us, she will go on.
The ocean is absolutely essential to create the conditions for life on Earth. And it is up to us to take care of it and learn about it so that we can take better care of it.
Our planet has many mysteries, and the key to understanding our planet starts with the water column.
The water column is incredibly huge. It's definitely the largest habitat on Earth, encompassing 95% or more of all the livable space on the planet. It's always moving and in flow. If you go to the bottom habitat, you could go back to the same coral mound, but in the water column, if you go back to the exact same place, but at a different time, the water column is going to be different. It is the least explored habitat on planet Earth. The water column is important because it's home to trillions of organisms in more than a million species or so. The lack of light has led to all sorts of incredible adaptations in midwater animals. Red and black are really great colors to be if you don't want to be seen in the depths. Many will make light, so bioluminescence. And of course, some organisms prey on them. A lot of those organisms have a dark red pigmented gut in order to block out the light that might accumulate in their stomachs. A lot of the deep sea fishes have these long, thin teeth, and those are good for grabbing onto prey and holding onto them. In the early 1800s, people with nets would find that if they collected in the shallows during the day and at night, that they would collect different types of organisms. Now we can use more sophisticated tools with acoustics, for instance, to understand where organisms are concentrating in the water column, what we call the deep scattering layer. Diel vertical migration has been dubbed the greatest migration on planet Earth. That's because billions and billions of organisms, primarily zooplankton, which are small fishes, crustaceans, and jellies, they will move up into shallow waters at night, and then when the sun starts to come up, they move back down into the dark, deep waters. And they do this all over the planet, even in lakes, on this daily basis. These water column animals are important for lots of reasons. They are playing different roles in the environment as predators, but then also as prey to large animals such as whales. They're also very important in planetary processes. They tie up a lot of carbon through their feeding, and then when they move down to deeper waters, that carbon is then locked in those deeper waters or even transferred all the way to the ocean floor. So they're a really critical part of the carbon cycle on planet Earth. The future of water column research is going to be characterizing the water column in new ways. One of the new ways is with environmental DNA, where we'll basically be able to take collections of water, and that water contains bits of cells that have come off of different organisms, and then we'll be able to sequence all the DNA that's in that water to understand better the organisms that are living around that place. This is a really efficient technology, so it can be deployed many times over and over in many different parts of the world. Because the water column is so connected and always moving, it's all one big giant system, and so we need to characterize it in multiple places to really understand it better.
And at our deepest depths, there are certainly discoveries to be made.
What kind of anglerfish is this?
It's a large one.
A successful one.
Yeah.
From a distance, we thought it was a rock, and imagine if you were a fish. A small fish, you wouldn't even know. You can eat things almost twice his size. This is his modified back fin. Looks almost like an elephant, right? He's very, very foot-like. Help him walk around on the bottom. They were once previously thought to be very rare, but once more exploration started happening in situ in the environments with ROVs, they became increasingly more known. So he's just going to sit and wait until something yummy comes along, and then he's going to gulp it up.
Discovery of new species is one of the most important undertakings for the NOAA Ocean Exploration Team.
When we name a species of fish, for example, we might be interested in looking at specific characters like length of fins, number of fins, how is their head shaped, how are their fins shaped, do they have spines, do they not have spines, maybe something about their lifestyle too. Are they shy or are they predators? Over the 19 dives on this expedition, we've covered depths from 300 meters on the shallow end down to as much as near 6,000 meters in the deep end.
Examining fish communities at different depths provides us with some insight into a healthy ecosystem. Within the Phoenix Islands protected area and within the Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monument, we are really just at the beginning of understanding what the fish communities are within these environments and what species are being protected by these protected areas. The bottom line for the managers within both of those reserves is that they need to know what's there so they can better manage, conserve, and protect those biological resources and the habitats that these animals rely on. And so this exploration that we've been doing provides these managers with that essential information so they can do their job and better manage these species.
In the deep sea, we really don't know too much about how fish live. There aren't a lot of direct observations. So one of the things that we're trying to understand about fishes is how they're distributed, get some ideas about their behavior, and that might allow us to better protect some of the species we have in deep water environments.
These communities are still being discovered. Deep sea fishes are still being identified. We're still learning what's living in the deep sea. This type of exploration really helps open our eyes into how diverse these systems are.
For every exciting discovery, deep sea scientists uncover an equally perplexing mystery. This time, it's the discovery of holes on the seafloor.
There's been a lot of excitement about these holes. One of the things we're interested in is how almost perfectly aligned these are, and the regularity of the spacing of the holes and the size of the holes themselves.
And the shape of the holes. I will still say the angularity, the rectangularness.
Right, I agree. I mean, my first thought also is that looks something man-made. They're so perfectly spaced. I mean, why would it always be that spacing? If you look in the fossil record, there are also indications of similar sorts of features. And so this suggests that there's an organism that has been making these sorts of features for a very long time. In the paper that Mike Vecchione and his colleague wrote, they were at about 2,000 meters, I believe.
We've got no idea what makes these things. That we don't even know if they're made by something underneath the surface, making a tunnel, occasionally punching up a hole, or if they're made by something walking along the surface and punching down through the sediment. It's a mystery, basically.
It's clear that everybody does love a mystery, the public and scientists including. So as the public has been hypothesizing about what might have caused these holes in social media put up by our wonderful partners at the Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration, scientists have also been chatting back and forth about possible mechanisms to create these holes, and we've heard everything from deep ocean floats to gastropods.
I had an interesting email that suggested that something had laid some eggs subsurface, and when those eggs hatch, basically they create those eruptive mounds. Whales feeding in the bottom, beaked whales specifically.
I think I'm going with the idea that there's probably a tunnel connecting these underneath the surface.
I'm really still hoping that I'll hear from either a member of the scientific community or a member of the public with an explanation that is just spot on, perfect, incontrovertible.
Can't be disputed.
Yeah, it just makes complete sense because we've had a number of them, and they all, well, not all, but a lot of them have strong merits to them, but none of them are what I would say conclusive.
Mysteries like this have a new solution, eDNA. Tiny particles of biological material allow us to know exactly which species inhabit a specific area.
To me, technology enables the science.
eDNA is environmental DNA, and so what it really is a catch-all term for all of the cellular material that organisms shed into their environment. Rather than having to go sample every plant or animal directly, what we can do is capture an environmental sample and extract DNA directly out of that environmental sample.
These bottles descend down open, and the water sample is then captured at specific depths. When the water comes up on board, we will filter it and capture any of the DNA in the water sample on a filter. We will then preserve that filter, and it will get sent off to a lab where it will be sequenced, and we will figure out what kind of organisms were in the environment at the time we collected those samples.
One of the nice things about it is found throughout the ocean, so we can collect it from the surface all the way down to the hadal zones. One of the things we can use environmental DNA for is things like ROV surveys, where when you're doing that kind of visual survey, you're limited to the field of view of the camera.
Oh, you're seeing
squid?
so we're more squid.
Oh, man,
If you
look at feed 2 right now, you can...
If the vehicle doesn't turn to get that animal on camera, then we will have no way of knowing that it was there. But because it's shedding cellular material into its environment, if we take a water sample right there, that water sample will contain that material, and it allows us to detect that animal and know that it was there even though we didn't see it. One of the problems with doing things like deep sea coral surveys is a lot of deep sea corals are very difficult to separate and identify visually. We can have 2 or 3 different species that unless you look at them under a microscope, you can't tell that they're different species. And so when you're doing something like an ROV survey and you just have that picture, we can't tell if it's species A, B, or C. But if we take that water sample, we can compare it to our genetic reference library and tell which species we have. It's also been really important for detecting rare species because you can detect things at high sensitivity, things that you have trouble finding in a net or finding in a survey because they're so rare. It's excellent at doing that kind of detection.
So I guess one of the ways we would be able to identify this is to count its tentacles, but looks like that's pretty impossible in this position that it's in right now.
The water column is the largest environment on Earth, and it is therefore the largest unexplored environment on Earth. And eDNA is going to allow us to explore the water column more so than we have ever been able to do before in NOAA ocean exploration.
it's become another really important tool kind of in the biological survey toolbox.
So this is going to be a revolutionary technique for getting a baseline understanding of unexplored areas of the deep sea.
Thanks to recent technological advances, the most remote areas of our planet are becoming more familiar. One such place is Alaska.
Let's control. Pull the pin.
The Aleutian chain is one of these areas in the world which has seen really high biodiversity for different species of sponges and corals. So far, this entire dive has been totally dominated by ecosystem engineering species. So I believe this is one of my favorite corals, the red tree coral, Primnoa pacifica. Red tree coral is actually one of the most important species in Alaska. It provides a lot of habitat for rockfish and juvenile crabs and lots of other species. This is truly a coral garden area. This is blowing my mind, quite honestly, this morning. This is a wonderful thing to see first thing in the morning.
I personally find it really interesting to think about the interplay between the biology and the geology.
Corals grow at very, very slow paces because they're very restricted in food compared to in the upper ocean.
And that's really useful information for geologists to have when thinking about the relative timing of different events here on the seafloor. And this area seems to have experienced quite a lot of activity over a long period of time. And it's interesting to note that those first boulder fields we examined had big, fresh-looking blocks with hardly any corals on them, right?
Yeah, there was hardly anything on those rocks earlier.
And these are very well covered. And the blocks are more rounded, and so yeah, I think these have been sitting here for a while.
Being a geologist and making observations means that you go a little slower and you really can look around and take in a place. It's been a really cool adventure.
The water column is the largest living space on the planet, and it's also the least explored.
And the reason that we do so many different transects at these different depths is that different organisms like to live in different parts of the water. I think traditionally people think of the water column as kind of this big mixed mass, that it's all the same. There's lots of different currents in the ocean, some currents that run deep, some currents that run in the midwater, and some currents that run in the shallow water as well. This is what's called a glass squid.
Yes, this is Bellinella borealis. Oh, did you just see the muscular portion that's covering the eye, the cornea, just opened a little bit? That was incredible.
It's really amazing. This is the first time I've ever dove on a cold seep area, so I'm super excited. This really is a needle in a haystack situation very often.
The pilot has pointed out a really good view from Sirius that shows an overview of this giant bush of tube worms. The fact that the tube worms are here means that the seeps are here.
The seep are definitely here. So these tube worms do not occur outside of chemosynthetic areas. Those are some healthy looking tube worms. Look at those. Beautiful.
Any methane that comes out has the ability to combine with water before it gets dissolved and form this white ice-like material on the seafloor.
Oh.
That's a wonderful shot. Thank you so much.
These tiny bubbles gave a glimpse of the community that might be below with our sonar from the ship and then sending down D2 2,000 meters below. Seeing these small bubbles just always makes me reminded of like how impressive the feat of human engineering is.
Oh wow, look at that. I think it's really important to be able to translate the science that we're doing into something that will inspire children, will inspire undergraduates, will inspire other students to become deep sea biologists.
With exploration, you're not even at the point where you can generate a hypothesis. You're trying to figure out what to ask. And there are all these new things that you discover and that either go along with your hypothesis or don't. And I just love how these expeditions get us to the point where we can ask questions in some cases, and in other cases collect enough data that we can answer some questions. So that's the really cool part about these trips.
And there is no shortage of questions in this remote corner of the world. For when one expedition returns, another is just beginning.
We're setting out to explore the Gulf of Alaska, unknown or poorly known parts throughout the entire Gulf. My name is Merlin Best. I'm a biologist with Fisheries and Oceans Canada. I work out of the Institute of Ocean Sciences in Sydney, BC on Vancouver Island, and I'm the biology lead on this expedition.
Exploration is important because without it, we wouldn't really know much of anything. My name is Jamie Conrad. I'm a geologist with the U.S. Geological Survey in Santa Cruz, California at their Pacific Coastal and Marine Science Center. I am the geology lead.
So starting out near Kodiak Island and then exploring seamounts, heading east out towards basically the other side of the Gulf, and then coming along northwest and back to close to where we started.
I think the major challenge is going to be weather. We have a number of storms that are kind of converging across the Gulf of Alaska. So we're going to try to remain flexible, try to stay a step ahead, and try to give ourselves the best opportunities to dive.
Seamounts kind of provide this really important relief point along the flat abyssal plain, and so every time you get something that's a little bit different and different kind of water currents and rocky substrate, you can have really cool ecosystems, really high in biodiversity. So lots of coral, sponges. We were seeing mats of brittle stars, sea stars eating the brittle stars, and so on up the food chain.
We're seeing the geology of the seafloor. We're seeing faults. We're seeing the context for the habitats that all these creatures are living on.
I came back from a break and the ROV had settled down and was looking at this kind of golden colored thing that was encrusting a rock.
I think it's important, more so that it just captured the minds of people around the world. Things like that, getting people engaged, getting people involved, and hopefully they follow along as we continue to find new discoveries.
The odds of finding something completely new to science are pretty high, and it happens pretty often.
We got kind of pushed out of the Gulf of Alaska due to poor weather. We're able to make the most of it by going inside and doing some dives within the fjords.
We were able to climb this basically vertical wall feature 500 meters below us and saw some really amazing stuff. We saw 4 or 5 giant Pacific octopus. Once we got to the eastern Gulf off of the Alexander Archipelago, we saw these really dense forests of Pacific red tree coral primnoa at a density that I've never seen before, supporting all different kinds of life.
Wow. I believe this is the deep sea octopus, Granulodone boreopacifica. This really rarely seen process happening.
We were diving on a seep off of Chatham Strait, about 32 miles-ish off of the mainland of Alaska. We saw an incredible amount of bubbles and this very diverse chemosynthetic community.
Geologists mostly have been able to explore the seafloor using remote means. Rarely do they get a chance to put their eyes on the seafloor and actually see what's there and see the context of the geology, see the faults, the rocks, the seeps, the landslides as they are.
We've been bouncing kind of between different areas, trying to stay one step ahead of the storms, and hopefully in doing so we're able to get a couple more good dives in.
Yeah, we're looking at what they call the glacial flour, which is really just finely ground rock.
I think exploration like this is crucial to helping us better manage our marine habitats and fisheries. If we don't know what's down there, if we've only been kind of estimating or guessing, then we don't know what we could be losing. The more that we know, the more that we can effectively manage, human activities in the ocean.
Just having the baseline knowledge for what's out there gives geologists that worry about geologic hazards an idea of what areas are prone to submarine landslides, how often faults might break and create big earthquakes, things like that.
Pretty shocked with the amount of work that we've been able to do. The team aboard has been wonderful. Everybody's kind of rallying behind the mission to get in the water as much as possible and do as much exploration as we can.
While studying the seafloor can teach us a great deal about aquatic life and geology, it can also teach us about ourselves and our own history.
We just finished mapping in an area where we have been sent a potential wreck point from the underwater archaeology branch at the Naval History and Heritage Command. Finding a shipwreck is actually really hard. Maritime archaeologists get us off on the right foot and sort of provide a haystack, and then we have to go through and sift and look for that needle. And we have great tools with the multi-beam, but everything needs to sort of line up just right. You need to have the correct resolution in your multi-beam. You need to have the ship be oriented perfectly. You need to have the topography be sort of background. You can't have it be masked by any natural features. This really has that true discovery feeling to it, and it's really exciting. I'm really excited. And yeah, we'll put the ROV down there and we'll find out, I guess. We'll see what we find.
Okay, let's proceed with launch. Pilots, we're going over.
Pilot copies. We have an object we're approaching. It's about 12 meters away now. And then beyond it, about 25 meters ahead of us, is another much larger target.
Well, it's not rocks, so we're off to a good start.
Good visual.
All right, so archaeologists, do we have enough insight to say that this is a shipwreck?
Well, it's definitely a shipwreck, and what I'm seeing here looks to be some of the frames, and that may be a trunk. This is looking submarine.
That is great news.
Oh yeah, there are definitely painted numbers on there.
So that's a confirm. What you're seeing right now on the side of the conning tower is the hull number, originally as USS Muscalon, SS-262 in the U.S. Navy as of 1957, S-14 Humanita of the Brazilian Navy, but you can see the number still teched out in paint there, S-14.
It's about as definitive as you can hope for in this kind of work. This vessel's service life was predominantly focused during World War II in the Pacific theater, intercepting merchant vessels. It was ultimately sunk in 1968 as a target vessel used in target practice off the coast of New York here, and hasn't been seen since that time. The vessel is in 635 meters of water, which is a little over 6 times the depth of a Gato-class submarine.
Anytime we find one of these wrecks, there's a variety of ways in which it has meaning. History that we can learn from, history that we might be inspired by, or history that we don't wish to repeat. Shipwreck can be habitat, and certainly what we're seeing here today is a wreck that has become like a hard coral reef.
This is an incredible shot. These corals are gorgeous.
Yeah, I think even us archaeologists can appreciate that. That's pretty extraordinary.
By sharing this with the public, it makes all of us part of a global core of exploration that connects us to the oceans themselves. We're learning, we're exploring, we're questing, we're looking on to beyond the next horizon into the depths of the ocean.
And in the depths of the ocean, the discovery of a shipwreck is just the beginning to understanding the bigger picture.
For all of you joining us, what we're looking at is an early to maybe mid-19th century sailing vessel which lies off the coast of North Carolina in several thousand feet of water. In many ways, the archaeology that we're practicing here is not that different from what you would see on CSI on television. If archaeologists and the other scientists are detectives, the first thing we do when we walk onto the scene is touch nothing and take very careful observation. How everything lies on the seabed gives us hints as to where it came from the original vessel, depending on how things shifted as the ship went down. But in terms, for those of you who are tuning in and watching, this is a deep ocean shipwreck where the passage of time and marine organisms have removed most traces of the wood other than that which would be buried beneath the sediment, leaving only the artifacts, either metal, ceramics, glass, above the surface. When you approach a site like this, what you're seeing is a pile of seemingly jumbled artifacts, but each of those in their position offers clues as to the ship itself, and indeed with each individual artifact some sense of where the ship may have come from, how old it is.
Like a needle in a haystack, discovery of these shipwrecks is no easy task. Sometimes an accident, sometimes the results of years of searching, they are always cause for celebration.
Pilot, this is Dive Super.
Dive Super Pilot.
Control room ready to launch.
Control room is ready to launch.
Copy that.
This area is sort of referred to as the graveyard of the Atlantic because of the high degree of shipwrecks that have occurred in this region.
We have World War II shipwrecks, including German submarines, and a lot of 19th century sailing vessels. So we have really quite the range of shipwrecks that date from every period of sailing.
Part of Oceanos' mission for the last 10 years is to work with our partner agencies, identifying and imaging potentially historically significant wrecks on the seafloor. I've got the backscatter here we surveyed last night. As you can see, we ran 2 lines over it, one with it in our port beam and one with it in our starboard beam, in hopes to get the best acoustic imagery of this wreck. These are really, really tiny objects on the seafloor on this massively large scale. So it's essentially like finding a needle in a haystack. And so the more information you have, and that's what those archaeologists do on shore, they're gathering history and archives and position and information to try to pinpoint and give us a smaller search box.
Vessels like the Oceanos Explorer, with their high-def cameras, their lighting system, really enables us to see what's on the seafloor that otherwise we would not be able to. As archaeologists, one thing we hate is the word treasure. The treasure that we're interested in is the treasure of knowledge and understanding, not something of intrinsic value.
All these sites are very interesting features because they are, of course, time capsules and are windows into the past. We're actually going to do a mapping video survey, driving back and forth, taking very good video of the area. This is something that's used for photogrammetry, so a technique used to do 3D visualizations or reconstructions.
Shipwrecks often act as artificial reefs as well, so when we do locate a shipwreck, we are interested in what is the biological community that has inhabited that wreck since it reached the seafloor. And that can be informative as far as connectivity or population studies for these organisms as well.
When it all comes together and you find that shipwreck on the seafloor, it can be such an invigorating and exciting experience because there's something about that kinship to the seafarers that were sailing, hundreds of years before you, doing the same thing to explore, to understand, to sail these seas. And it's this connection with those people in the past that really round out the human experience and our interaction with the ocean.
The depths of our oceans are full of marvels, whether it's the uniqueness of species or the usefulness of seafloor geologies. NOAA scientists work to make this science useful to everyone.
The ocean is huge. When you really stop and think about the scale, it's humbling, it's mind-boggling, it's really hard to comprehend.
Basically, the world's life support system is dependent on the ocean, right? A lot of people don't realize that every other breath we take is because of the ocean.
When we look at a map of the world, it's easy to think that the ocean has in fact been mapped, because at global scale we can see the shape of a lot of features. What that really represents is predicted bathymetry. So for the majority of the ocean, we don't actually have direct measurements. What we have is a prediction that is very coarse in resolution.
So this is an undersea mountain that was known from those satellite measurements. And you can see that there's some sort of mountain feature here. You can tell there's some undulations in the terrain, but you can't really make out any fine features. Once we came through and mapped it on this expedition from the hull-mounted sonar, we revealed all these much more fine-scale volcanic pinnacle cone features, which were previously unknown for this area. Here you have an image of a NOAA ship with a multi-beam sonar that's hull-mounted, so it's sending out a sound signal from under the hull, and it's basically in a fan-shaped swath, and you can see that it's sending out these sound signals, and we can actually measure the time it takes to bounce from the ship to the seafloor and back, and that's giving us the distance. Along this whole swath, you're gathering many measurements, and then we can turn the ship around and do another section and stitch those two together and build a 3D terrain map. When we're out there in the ocean and we're making a discovery for the first time, there's really no feeling like that. I mean, you're stumbling across something that no human beings have yet seen, and it's a really exciting time.
Right now, we're 186 miles off the coast of Florida, along the Blake Plateau.
Oh, look at all those squid, oh my gosh.
Yes, it's beautiful.
It looked from the satellite imagery like it was just boring seafloor, just abyssal plain. There weren't any features, there weren't any creatures. We wanted to fill in those gaps for mapping, so we started mapping that area, and then miraculously we saw all these different seafloor features coming out on the mapping area, and it turned out that we were the first to discover this massive, massive deep water coral complex. To date, as far as we know, is the largest deep water coral complex in the world.
I've never seen anything like this.
This is honestly one of the largest aggregate of thickets of Lophilia that I've seen.
The differences between looking at something from really far away and saying, yeah, there's a seafloor there, versus zooming in and realizing that there's a whole dynamic community that could be a game changer for management decisions and all sorts of things. That's the value add that we see when we map something and then start exploring and investigating.
Pilot, dive super.
Go dive super.
You guys are free to continue your descent.
What's really fascinating about these ships is we can map one night and then go out the very next day and put down these deep diving robots and see in high resolution cameras what's living there.
It's all sort of iterative, right? And we can keep mapping and getting more detail and more information, and all of that feeds up into our global understanding of how our planet works, what resources we have, what we need to conserve, where we can build, where fisheries are sustainable, where they're not. And so when we think about a global community and our contributions to it, I think it really starts with a much better understanding of the oceans and how we serve them and how they serve us.
So there's a huge initiative right now to map the remaining part of the world's oceans that's not mapped yet.
The creation of this project is really meant to inspire the effort to completely map the ocean floor by the year 2030. This is the coverage in the 2022 data release. Basically, black is where we don't have data. I think it's very difficult to try to, even for myself, to have a true sense of the scale of what we're trying to do. A single project, a single nation, a single group can't do it alone. We have to work and build this map together.
So it's really important for us to do these types of explorations, even in waters outside the U.S. economic zone, because these waters are connected. The ocean knows no boundaries.
We may draw political boundaries for various reasons, but we have to really understand the ocean and its processes.
It's often been said that people don't protect what they don't understand. If we're not able to see what's out there in the ocean, then we're really not able to truly appreciate it and therefore care about it. So part of all these efforts are to really sort of shine a light on what a wonderful and amazing place the ocean is, including the deep sea, and bring that home. This is our home planet, and we need to understand what's out there.